Okay, so in this series of talks, we have been looking at this symbol, the Wheel of Life. And I've put a different image of the Wheel of Life up here, one that's quite dear to me. And this is produced by a Western artist in the order called Aloka. And I really appreciate it for its colour and clarity. So I wanted to use that as an image in tonight's talk. So in the first talk of this series, Vedanya introduced this symbol as being a bit like a computer game set in a giant rambling castle, a game that we have been playing obsessively for our whole lives. And in this game there are different levels represented by these 6 realms in the Wheel of Life, each with their own characteristics, their own challenges, and we could say their own bosses to defeat. And just like how we would collect points in a computer game, in the Wheel of Life, we can progress or we can fall back through these realms, dependent on the law of karma. And this is represented in this inner section of the wheel here, and was the subject of Mokshitara's talk a couple of weeks ago. So yes, represented here with beings moving up or moving downwards, depending on the karma that they have created for themselves. So this shows us how through our intentional actions, whether skillful or unskillful, we can build up, in a sense, a karmic score, what Buddhists might call merit, which in turn determines our mental states, as well as conditioning our external experiences, whether positively or negatively. And so we find ourselves in our lives, as well as in these talks, wandering around the different realms of the castle, trying to make sense of it all. Not always quite being sure how we ended up there, or even the rules of the game that we seem to find ourselves playing, called life. And as Bodhinaga outlined last week, these 6 realms can be seen as metaphors for both our experience of the world around us, and also our internal mental states, the mental states that condition this experience. So last week he guided us through the dungeons, the armories, the jealously guarded treasure vaults of the castle, through 3 of the 6 realms on the wheel, the realms of the tormented beings, the hungry ghosts or praetors, and the titans or asuras. And it was sobering listening. And this week I'm going to be guiding us through the other 3 realms in the inner section of the Wheel of Life. And hopefully it's going to be a slightly more uplifting experience, although as we will see, these realms come complete with their own dangers and pitfalls. So we will be exploring the realm of the animals, the gods, and lastly, the realm of the humans. So let's begin our onward journey in the great wild forests that surround the castle, as well as in its stables, its slaughterhouses, its kitchens, in the realm of the animals. And in it, we see animals doing all sorts of things that come naturally to them: eating, sleeping, fighting, copulating, struggling to survive. So it might seem, particularly in this image, quite idyllic at first, a bucolic image of nature and harmony. But if we look a little deeper, we will quickly see that inhabiting this realm is indeed nature red in tooth and claw. So it's a realm where the beings who inhabit it are driven only by instinct, their lives solely shaped by the urges that they have to fulfill their most basic needs for sustenance, shelter, rest, procreation. So this is also a way of living that we can fall into ourselves as humans. So I want you to ask yourself honestly now, how much of your life is spent engaged in or preparing for or thinking about activities that are either directly or indirectly concerned with fulfilling these basic needs for food, for shelter, and for sex. So, you might, like me, think, yeah, God, that's pretty depressing. Or you might be thinking, well, what's wrong with that? What's wrong with that? Isn't it natural for us to seek to fulfill our basic needs? We are animals after all as human beings. Isn't that just an essential function of being an animal with an animal body? And in response, I would partially agree with you. So we do have a set of biological imperatives that we have to attend to in order to lead happy, satisfied, and fulfilled lives, in order to be healthy physically, mentally, emotionally. So attending to these basic needs in an appropriate way is a really important foundation that we need to lay in order to lead a happy and fulfilled life. And all we need to do is look at the impact of not sleeping or not eating properly on us to see what an effect this can have on our general well-being. And likewise, when we're missing intimate connection with others, whether physical or emotional. So I remember once being told that if we're experiencing negative mental states, rather than assuming that they happen as the result of some sort of deep personal failing or some sort of existential malaise, what we need to do is halt and ask ourselves, are we hungry? Are we angry? Are we lonely? Or are we tired? And often the answer to those questions are, yes, I am one of those things. And what this points to is the fact that at least some of the difficulty that we experience arises because of and can be solved on the level of our basic needs. So it's important that we don't try to deny our basic animal needs, our instinctual selves. So we do need food, we do need shelter, we need company, we need security, we need rest. And it's important that we don't become puritanical about desiring these things. So if on a certain level meeting these basic needs is important, what's the problem with living this way, as one might do in the animal realm, driven simply by fulfilling these basic needs? So when I was writing this talk at the weekend, it was a lovely sunny day, and I was accompanied by my cat sitting in the sunshine on the windowsill above my desk. And I caught myself thinking, oh, I wish I could be my cat. Yeah, he is living the life. He gets fed on time every day. He can just spend his whole day sleeping, eating, doing as he pleases, goes out and exercises when he wants, might catch a mouse or two if he can be bothered. He usually can't be bothered, but it happens sometimes. He doesn't have a care in the world. He's just living in the present moment. No worries about the future, no anxieties and regrets about the past. It must be bliss. But would it though? Would it? Would living our lives in that way be bliss? Would living your life just in the moment, driven only by your needs and your instincts, be a happy and fulfilled one? So in a sense, the cat analogy is a bad one because as a pet, he's in the enviable position of having all of his needs looked after for him in exchange for hanging around and being cute. And very sadly, and possibly unjustly, I don't think anybody is going to afford me the same luxury. Offers welcomed, but I know. Well, the same goes for all of you. So, so yeah, in the context of humanity, and for animals, and for humans too, until very recent history, life is, as the maxim goes, nasty, brutish, and short. So being driven so strongly by one's needs leads to intense competition, conflict over resources, great insecurity, and also enormous amounts of energy being dedicated to meeting those needs. And in the context of humanity, all we need to do is look at how many wars, how many conflicts have been started over the control of resources to see how strongly and destructively a desire to meet these basic needs can be, however well rationalized these needs and desires can be by ideologies. So not only does a life spent fulfilling our animal needs lay us bare to all of these difficulties I've just mentioned, it can also lead us to experience some very unpleasant mental states. When all we care about is fulfilling our needs, these needs can very quickly become desires. And as we know, desires can quickly become compulsive, addictive, destructive, slipping into the sorts of neurotic craving that Bodhinaga spoke about with the praetors, the hungry ghosts, last week. And it's no wonder that many of our most destructive and addictive compulsions and cravings form around what are, at root, basic animal needs for things like food and sex and comfort. So also, when these placid animals' desires are frustrated, things can quickly turn nasty. They can become very vicious, very savage. But even if we could get all of our basic needs met for us, like my cat, without all of that striving, all of that conflict, and we could let go of the neurotic cravings that those things can be surrounded by, would that be a recipe for happiness? So thinking about my own life, I can definitely spot times where I feel like I'm mainly inhabiting this animal realm, when life can feel a bit like this treadmill of eat, sleep, wake, work, repeat, with a bit of Netflix, tossed in for good measure. And there's nothing wrong with any of these things in and of themselves. So I need to eat and sleep. I need to earn money to look after myself. I need some downtime for relaxation. I'm even able to find a lot of pleasure in these things, especially when I'm able to enjoy them, appreciate them mindfully. But when life becomes just about these needs, however in the moment we are with them, things can quickly feel a bit sort of grubby and dissatisfying. And this is because as humans, we need a sense of higher meaning, a sense of having higher values. We need purpose and fulfillment beyond just seeking to satisfy our most basic needs, the physical needs of our bodies, the emotional needs of our hearts. And part of this is the need to exercise our capacity for self-reflection and self-knowledge, so to understand and engage with a rich inner life that we all have, and an experience of the world that goes beyond, well beyond, just our animal needs. So for animals and for ourselves, we inhabit the animal realm, and our mental and physical energies can become preoccupied with meeting these needs. When we do this sort of rich and fulfilling self-inquiry is just not possible. Not only this, when our actions aren't guided by self-reflexive awareness, a sense of higher values and purpose, they are guided instead by our feelings of pleasure and pain, of like and dislike. And these arise from the instinctual, habitual, unaware animal selves that we have within us. And it's exactly this way of behaving and living that keeps us bound to the wheel in the first place, to these same old reactive cycles that the wheel represents, and that we looked at in the first few weeks of the introductory course. I think it's no accident that there are 3 animals used as the symbols that are driving the wheel at its hub: greed, hatred, and delusion. So in short, for beings that inhabit the animal realm, the possibility of being in the gap is not there. So the possibility of being in the gap is not there, and so the opportunity to act creatively and growthfully remains out of reach to them. So in each of the 6 realms, there is a Buddha, And actually it's not represented on this image that I've shown you tonight, but it is on the shrine and ones we've looked at in previous weeks. And the Buddha offers a symbolic gift to the beings that inhabit that realm, symbolic of the pathway out of that realm and the sufferings, the limitations that it represents. And in the animal realm, the Buddha offers a book that represents culture, learning and knowledge of both the outer world, but also our inner selves, all of the things that are denied to us when the animal inside us takes over. And these things are ways in which our higher values can be communicated to us through culture, through learning, through knowledge. And they're ways through which we can develop our capacity for this self-reflexive awareness that we need in order to grow. So if we find ourselves inhabiting this realm, perhaps we might start feeling that just too much of our time, too much of our energy is being taken up with obsessively satisfying our basic needs. Let us look to reconnect with the things in our lives, the ideas, the activities, the relationships that ignite this sense of richer connection to a sense of something higher, something more meaningful. And I will return to this a little bit later on. So there we are, the animal realm, and a little bit about its pitfalls of a life spent trapped within it. But now we're going to leave the animal realm behind, and we will enter a realm that is far more alluring, and yet in many ways far, far more dangerous. So let us visit the highest turrets of our castle, to its sumptuous and elegant chambers, which are inhabited by the noblest of beings who live there, the devas, or the gods. And in this realm, represented at the top of the wheel of life here, it's inhabited by extremely beautiful beings, leading a life of seemingly endless joy and possibility, surrounded everywhere by exquisite things and refined pleasures. So I was trying to imagine what the God realm would be like, and sort of what I came up with was, like, imagine the most luxurious, all-inclusive holiday resort you could imagine, and be, like moving there for the rest of your life, in which you only need to wish for something, and that wish is instantly fulfilled. So this is the sort of realm, at least symbolically, mythically, we're talking about with the realm of the gods or the devas. So in this realm there is no conflict, no struggle, no pain. So not much suffering or dukkha at all. Life is just like a song, perfect in every way. And that really does sound wonderful, doesn't it? If only life could be like that. And some very fortunate people do get to inhabit this realm. So some people manage to attain such a degree of comfort in their lives, be it financial, material, emotional, even spiritual, that their needs and wants, whether basic or refined, can be met without a second thought. For whom life can just be this one long stream of pleasurable experiences. So shouldn't this be the goal of both our worldly and spiritual endeavours? Isn't this where we want to be headed? To reach a state in which our lives are just so pleasant, so refined, that the whole notion of suffering seems like nothing more than a bad memory from a past life. If the God realm is at the top of the wheel, then isn't this where we should all want to be headed? So again, the wheel of life serves as a stark warning against this. And I want to try to outline why with two examples, one metaphorical and one personal. So again, when I was thinking about the God realm and trying to kind of imagine what that might be like, to come up with a metaphor for it, a scene came to my mind from The Wizard of Oz. And there's loads of similarities actually between The Wizard of Oz and The Wheel of Life or the Dharma. And I am trademarking here and now a future talk or pantomime or possibly even a PhD thesis entitled Dharmic Themes in The Wizard of Oz. Anyway, for now, we'll just dip in. So in The Wizard of Oz, Dorothy and her companions have been following the yellow brick road, the Noble Eightfold Path, and they are on a quest to find the Emerald City, Enlightenment, and the wizard who lives there, the Buddha or the enlightened mind, who Dorothy hopes will be able to tell her how to get back home, to discover her true self, which is in fact no self or emptiness, which she realizes, really thought this through, which she realizes when she wakes up at the end and realizes it was all a dream. Anyway, so in The Wizard of Oz, they have journeyed along the yellow brick road through the deep, dark forest and faced the terrors within. Lions and tigers and bears. Oh my! Yes! Greed and hatred and delusion. That was a little bit less persuasive, that one. Anyway. And eventually they emerge from the forest and they see the Emerald City sparkling up ahead in the distance. So close they can almost touch it. But the Wicked Witch of the West, Mara, who doesn't want Dorothy to get to the Emerald City, casts a spell. As she says, "Now, my beauties, something with poison in it, I think, but attractive to the eye and soothing." So if you remember, Dorothy and her companions step out and they find themselves in a beautiful field full of flowers, just flowers as far as the eye can see. And running through this field, enchanted by their beauty, their beautiful scent, they gradually slip into a deep, deep sleep. "You can't sleep now, we're nearly there," cries the Scarecrow, who isn't affected by the spell because he's a scarecrow. I don't know. Anyway, right, what's this got to do with the God realm? Why am I banging on about the Wizard of Oz? So firstly, the God realm is a place that people can often arrive in with the best of intentions, and even after much hard work and skillful action. In fact, it's traditionally said that gods who inhabit this realm are there because of huge amounts of positive karma that they have accrued from lifetimes of skillful action. So it's no luck, it's no accident that the gods are inhabiting that realm. They are there because of how high they have climbed up that karmic ladder. And like the Devas, when we act skillfully, we can experience some extremely positive and refined states of mind, refined states of consciousness. And a good example of this is dhyana in meditation. So the intensely pleasurable and positive states of refined consciousness that we can experience through meditation. And anyone who's experienced these states will know what at least a flavor of dwelling in the God realm is like. And again, there's nothing intrinsically wrong with these sorts of refined pleasures, just like there's nothing wrong with needing to meet our basic animal needs. But like Dorothy, intoxicated in that field of flowers, unless we are really, really careful, they can lull us to sleep and make us lose sight of the Emerald City that is just beyond the field. Yeah, the higher vision that has been driving us, and the possibility of stepping off the wheel altogether. And in doing so, the gods lose sight of the preciousness and the brevity of life, and also the importance of the journey ahead of them. And this is one of the great tragedies of a life spent living in the God realm. As the Scarecrow says to Dorothy, "You can't sleep now, we're nearly there." So the gods asleep as they are to all of the sufferings of life, asleep to the higher vision and purpose that was driving them forwards, become complacent. And complacency leads in only one direction, downwards. And eventually, the God's positive karma plays itself out, and the conditions that have given rise to the extremely positive experiences and mental states cease, and then the gods are in for a fall. And so to add insult to injury, not only are they in for a fall, but because they are so unused to experiencing suffering, dukkha of any form, this inevitable fall is all the more painful and intolerable for them. So what might this fall from grace look like in the context of our own lives? And I want to illustrate this with an example from my own life. So nearly 2 years ago now, I was ordained on a 4-month retreat in the mountains of Spain, and it was the most enriching and rewarding experience of my life. And I think I experienced all of the 6 realms of the Wheel of Life when I was on that retreat. And given the conditions I had, in which I had a lot of time and a lot of space just to experience myself and my mental states, I was able to inhabit them very vividly, very clearly. And this was true of inhabiting the God realm. And whilst I certainly can't say that every moment I had there was like this, the overall experience was extremely positive. And I did experience prolonged periods of, what felt like I was inhabiting a space that the metaphor of the God realm is trying to describe and represent. So externally, I was living a life in an extraordinarily wild and beautiful place, literally in a godlike realm. It was just amazing, with a group of amazing men who I loved, my brothers. So there was beauty, there was connection, but also all of my needs were pretty much entirely met for me. 3 times a day, a bell would ring, and food would magically appear on the table, as if by magic. And whilst life was very simple, I didn't have to worry about the stresses, the strains of meeting these needs, of working, shopping, traveling, all of that. And internally, I also had, periods of time where I would just experience extremely pleasurable and joyful mental states in meditation. It seemed at times like all I had to do was just sit down on a meditation stool and I was off. But at times I would also catch myself slipping into the sort of complacency I mentioned with regard to the gods. Of course this is how things were. It's all so easy, and this was just going to be how it was going to be from now on. This was the real me. I discovered it at last. But of course, as all things do, the retreat came to an end, and I came home, and the conditions of my life changed significantly. And of course, as the Dharma tells us, all things arise in dependence on causes and conditions. And this teaching of Pratitya Samappada is engraved on this beautiful woodblock at the side of the hall. This being, that becomes. From the arising of this, that arises. This not being, that does not become. From the ceasing of this, that ceases. So the conditions that supported me in inhabiting something of this God realm had changed. And so, of course, my experience of my mental states, my perception of the world, inevitably changed too. And I remember returning to the UK in extremely positive states of mind, getting the train through the Sussex countryside, and it was so green, I could have cried. And the drizzle on my skin after 2 months of baking sunshine, I thought I'll never moan about the rain again. It took me about 2 days, but anyway. But later in the day, I also remember going to a supermarket for the first time and just standing there feeling utterly, utterly overwhelmed. The experience coming back to me like the spectre from a previous life. And eventually, I went back to work full-time as a teacher, and that really was overwhelming. So like the gods, slipping out of this realm, I found this experience at times very difficult. So to experience such positivity, such pleasure, such refinement of being, and then to have the conditions that supported that slipping away was hard. But over time, despite this sense of loss, even of falling backwards, I was able to make sense of things, to thread these extremely positive experiences into a kind of broader tapestry of my life with all of its ups, all of its downs, its struggles, its successes, its disappointments. So in short, I was able to far more comfortably and happily inhabit the last of the 6 realms, which is the human one. One in which I could find the seeds of a more meaningful and more sustainable growth and change. One that wasn't so dependent on the causes and conditions that I'd found myself in. So I'll return to this example a little bit later on, more to say on that. But for now, let's leave the God realm behind by ways of the Buddha who inhabits it, offering the gods beautiful music played on the lute. So the Buddha plays to the gods in a way that will appeal to their aesthetic sensibilities, their desire for refined pleasures. So in a way that might make them sit up, listen, pay attention, and wake up. But the medium here is also the message. And music is something that is built from this ever-changing flow of melody, of rhythms, of harmonies. And so it serves to remind the gods that even things of great beauty and pleasure are, like music, impermanent. So our stay in the God realm has come to an end, and as the law of impermanence says it must. So where next? As we continue our journey through the game, through the castle, we perhaps notice that there is more going on besides its kings and warriors, its ghosts and demons. We notice that inhabiting this castle are all sorts of people leading very ordinary lives: cooks, servants, librarians, builders, artists, so on, all going about their daily lives quietly, with all of the ups and downs that entails. So in many ways, I think looking at the wheel of life, the human realm isn't the one that our eyes tend to get immediately drawn to. It can go a bit unnoticed. I think we could say that the human realm is the least sexy of the 6 realms. It's the least captivating. We can easily think, oh, the human realm, well, that sounds a bit dull, doesn't it? You know, give me the gods or the titans any day. It sounds far more exciting. But in fact, the human realm is exactly where we want to be, because it's in this realm that we can find the possibility of escaping the great game, of escaping the castle altogether, which, as Vedanya outlined in his first talk, is the real purpose of this great game represented by the Wheel of Life. As such, it's of crucial importance that we try to find this realm and inhabit it as much of the time as we possibly can. And to underline this, Sangharakshita has said that our first task in the spiritual life is simply to become a happy, healthy human being. And this is often spoken about in the context of the first 2 stages of the system of Dharma life we have in Triratna, the stages of integration, of becoming one traveller, one person travelling one path, and of positive emotion, so becoming a capable, reliable, emotionally positive individual. And for some people, this could be a lifetime's work, but it's work that we must undertake. For if we don't, we are doomed to spend the rest of our lives trapped in one of the other realms on the wheel. So entering and inhabiting this realm is such an important undertaking in the spiritual life. But what does it actually mean? Yeah, what states and ways of being does this metaphor, the realm of the humans, represent? So firstly, I think it's helpful to understand the human realm in relation to the other 5 realms on the Wheel of Life, which is why we are looking at it last. So to be human, I think, is to experience, in a sense, all of the other realms on the wheel, but not to the extremes that they depict. So in the human realm, we do experience pleasure, suffering, hatred, craving, a desire to fulfill our needs, but not to the extent that any of these things begin to rule our lives or cause us to be incapable of connecting with life's deeper meaning and purpose, which for Buddhists, of course, is to find a way off the wheel and to end the seemingly endless suffering that it represents. So in a sense, the human realm is a realm of balance, a rich web of different states and experience that we can all relate to as the ups and downs of our life. But ups and downs that we are neither immune to on the one hand or overwhelmed by on the other. But I also think that we can talk about the qualities that are particular to the human realm, qualities that we need to strive to cultivate if we are to really fully inhabit it. So to answer this, I was reflecting on what is it that sets apart the human realm from the other 2 realms that we have looked at tonight. The key difference between the realm of the humans and the realm of the gods is that in the human realms we experience suffering. In the human realm we experience suffering. We experience dukkha, although not to the extent that it incapacitates us in the way that it does for the beings in the lower realms of the wheel. And unlike the gods, this gives us the motivation that we need to practice spiritually, to want to reflect on the nature of our lives and the world that we live in. In essence, it gives us the desire to practice the Dharma, which is what we truly need if we are to do something meaningful about our existential situation. And then the key difference between the human realm and the realm of the animals is that in the human realm we have self-reflexive awareness or self-reflexive consciousness. We are self-aware. We have this capacity for self-understanding, for self-knowledge. And so in the human realm we don't just have the compulsion to try to practice the Dharma and to grow spiritually, but we also have the capacity and the capability to do it as well. A capacity and capability that is not afforded when we are inhabiting the animal realm, as I tried to outline earlier. And as a reflection of this, the image of the artist or the musician is one that's often depicted as part of the human realm, as somebody who is who's creatively engaged with the most human of projects, know thyself, know thyself. It's perhaps this drive and capacity to know oneself, not simply as an individual. I'm not talking about my personality here, but as a human being affected by the human condition. It's this drive, this capacity that separates us from the human realm from all of the others. In fact, the Buddha of the human realm appears as a religious wanderer, as a human being undertaking the spiritual life to find a way off the wheel and all of its sufferings through reflecting on the truths about the nature of reality that are communicated through the Dharma. So to return to my experience of my ordination retreat, I come back from this extremely positive and in many ways heavenly experience, only to be thrust back into a very, very human life. A life in which I had to re-engage with the inevitable ups and downs and the successes and the struggles that we all face being in the world. And this was really difficult at times. In fact, I can distinctly remember feeling a sense of grief, of real loss, of grief, of being disconnected in some ways, not in others, but of being disconnected in certain ways from something extremely positive that I couldn't seem to so readily replicate, leading a busy, worldly human life. But this experience was a teaching and a blessing in the long run, as many of our difficulties are, because it forced me, encouraged me to look seriously at what living this human life, living in this human realm, really means, as well as coming to appreciate the benefits and the opportunities that it affords us. And indeed, for me, one way that I think about being in the order, the very reason why I was ordained and being part of the order, is being part of a group of individuals who are trying to support each other to live, to lead fully human lives, to find out what it means to be a human, and to find within this the seeds of meaningful growth, meaningful change. And despite being difficult in certain ways, this period of time, 2 years since my ordination now, of being part of the order has been extremely positive and growthful for me. Not least because it's provided me with a context to really develop so many of the qualities that we need in order to fully inhabit this human realm, qualities that we can all develop if we choose to. So what's made the difference for me? What's helped me to inhabit this human realm more consistently? And this could be the subject of a whole new talk, and time is running short, so just a few suggestions for now. So firstly, cultivating and expressing friendship and metta. It's in the human realm that we are able to most readily, most meaningfully connect with other people on the basis of an understanding of our shared human predicament. And this is the basis for compassion, which alongside wisdom are the tools that we need, the context we need, the skills that we need in order to try to transcend that predicament. And my friendships, both inside and outside of the order and the Sangha, have perhaps been what has nourished me the most over the last 2 years. Kept me sane, kept me healthy, kept me human. So secondly, cultivating and expressing a sense of higher beauty. As humans, we are able not only to connect with beauty, but to find within beauty an expression of and a longing for a sense of higher value and meaning. Unlike the gods who perhaps experience beauty just for a sense of refined pleasure and enjoyment. And for me, I mainly find this in music. And I took up learning the piano a few years ago, and this just nourishes and grounds me and uplifts me beyond measure. It gives me a way to express and regulate my emotions, the ups and the downs of my life, to express that sense of longing for something. For others it's going to be different. It might be art, literature, nature. But finding this creative outlet is absolutely essential. It's essential part of exploring and experiencing being fully human, fully inhabiting that human realm. Thirdly, it's cultivating and expressing mindful awareness, the capacity for self-reflection. And as Buddhists, we can mainly do this through meditation, through ethical practice. We can explore through this the drive that we have to know thyself, to become a reflective being capable of change and of growth. And lastly, using these qualities, compassion, a sense of higher meaning, and awareness, to fully face the sufferings of our lives and to see them for what they really are, not pushing away difficult experiences and the dukkha that they contain, but seeing them instead as opportunities for insight and for growth. For it's only in the human realm that we can know that we are even on the wheel at all. And so it's only in this realm that we have any chance of stepping off it. It's only in the human realm that we have the opportunity to see, that the game that we have been playing our whole lives is just a wild goose chase. It's going nowhere. No winning, no losing, not in the long run, just endless toil, endless up, endless down. And when we can see this with clarity, with awareness, with compassion, we see that the real purpose of the game is, as Vedanya suggested, to break out of the castle, to step off the wheel altogether. And it's the possibility of having these liberating insights that make the human realm such a precious place to inhabit. And in particular, we can bring this, in the human realm, we can bring this quality of self-awareness to the nature of suffering itself, to the way in which suffering is a fundamental part of the fabric of life. We can come to see that dukkha is not a personal failing. It is part of the structure of existence. It is a structural reality, not a personal failing. To return to our computer game analogy, we can come to see that suffering is an inbuilt part of the game. It is part of the software of ourselves and of the world that we live in. And breaking free from suffering is therefore not about making it to the highest levels of the castle, but about cracking and rewriting the very code of the game itself. And it's exactly the human capacity for mindful self-awareness that allows for us to become aware of the code that underpins these kind of cyclical algorithms that drive our habitual behavior, which is, after all, what the wheel of life represents and what keeps us stuck to the wheel, keeps us playing the game over and over again. But it also affords us the opportunity to crack the code, to rewrite these algorithms and to propel ourselves into more creative, more positive, more growthful spirals of behavior. And this is what is represented by the outer rim of the wheel, which is a series of images and symbols that we can think of as the code that programs the wheel, which we can crack at a place that we like to call the gap. And understanding and cracking this code is going to form the subject of future talks, so make sure you don't miss out. Thank you very much.